You want to get your backyard summer ready, but you don't want to break the bank? Wayfair gets it. Planning on dining al fresco or relaxing poolside? Wayfair has everything you need to prep your space. Shop now and save up to 70% off during Wayfair's 4th of July clearance. Score huge deals on outdoor furniture, area rugs, and more. We're talking thousands of products for every style and budget. Plus, surprise flash deals July 6th. Don't wait. Shop Wayfair's 4th of July clearance now through July 6th at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
To Emotionally Unavailable. I'm your host, Malisa Hepner. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a little tired. I'm recording a solo earlier than I usually would because, that's when I had the time. So I'm still a little sleepy. I wanted to continue the conversation that we're having around why, if connection is the key to survival as humans, do we resist connection so much? Why do we have these subconscious patterns that keep us disconnected from other people? Why does it feel safer to be disconnected? Why are we in these patterns to begin with? So I was thinking about this, and a really big part of what I'm wanting to bring into more of these episodes, not just solo, but with whoever I'm talking to when I'm interviewing someone, is integration. Integration means let's stop analyzing, let's stop intellectualizing. How do I put these steps into action? How do I change my behavior? And so it really reminded me, I've talked so much about this on this show, on the other show, Unquiet Soul with Angie and me. You should check it out. Anyway, I'll just repeat it, but, in 2017-ish is when I came across the holistic psychologist, which one day I would love to be able to talk to her. But anyway, and so much of what she was saying didn't make sense to me. I learned about trauma for the first time, and that was beautiful because I now knew I wasn't a psycho. I wasn't crazy. I just had trauma. And then I realized it was CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, from an entire childhood. Most days of the 0 to 18 years of childhood were pretty terrible. So it was just, there was a lot of different types of trauma inflicted. And so understanding what PTSD and CPTSD were and kind of how they were impacting my life was really important in sort of an awakening. That was probably the first little mini awakening I had, but it really, it deepened my willingness and ability to discover more about trauma, about me, about the way I'm seeing the world, interacting with the world. But there was so much I didn't understand. I could understand why I was doing what I was doing. I didn't know how to change what I was doing. And she talked a lot about nervous system regulation, but for me, it didn't work because I didn't quite understand, aside from knowing I had trauma, why I was dysregulated to begin with. For me personally, it took a lot of uncovering my core wounds and knowing which wounds were being triggered and how to comfort that part of myself before I could get very quick at nervous system regulation. I really had to understand the why behind why I was dysregulated. I couldn't just skip past the understanding of my emotions. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone. I don't know. But for me personally, I just couldn't skip past that. So without understanding why I was triggered, I couldn't manage the triggers. So I'm still doing my best, but acting like a complete psycho all the time. It was definitely the beginning of some real self-discovery, but it was missing so much for me personally. And that's okay. I'm not saying anything about that. It's just why I'm doing what I do now. So I really want to give actionable steps to you guys through my own experiences and the information that I've gained to help me through my own experiences for you all to actually be able to integrate this into your own life, to embody, which means feel it all in your body. Get out of your head, become this new person who, I don't want to say it like that. Come home to yourself. Come home to that body that you've been separated from for so long and reclaim. I like that. Reclaim your identity, reclaim who you were before the world told you to be somebody else. So not really becoming a new person, becoming the more innocent, joyful, peaceful version that you were before you experienced the lifetime of things that you've experienced. So one of the big examples that I think about when I was still having trouble integrating, and I talked about this early episode of the show. Uh, I had a friend on who needed to be anonymous, and so we had a little series of Anonymously Unavailable with Jane Doe, and we went through the Finding Peace workbook. We did a little book club series on it. I highly recommend those episodes because you get to see me in real time taking in information and integrating it to the best of my ability. But on one of those episodes, I was a wreck because I had just gotten back from a beach vacation that I took with my family and my very, very, very close friend's family. At that time, I had 5 members in my family. If you're new here, I've lost a child in December. And she had a lot of people because there were some small kids, like she has grandkids. So anyway, I knew better than to do that, especially in the state that I was in at the time. I was just coming out of a mental health crisis, the school year had just ended, and it was a job that had really robbed me of my soul, and I was not well. I was doing better than I had been the prior October when I made a plan to end my life, but I wasn't well. I really was. I was doing my best. I really was, but I wasn't well. I knew better than to take this trip, but I was trying so hard to rely on self-discipline and motivation to be regulated, which sounds so silly in hindsight, but I thought that I could just think my way through that experience. So let me tell you a few reasons for me personally why it wasn't necessarily a great idea. For one, I still didn't have great boundaries. I had a hard time telling people what I needed and sticking to it, because if I'm disappointing someone, I don't do well with that. And I mean, it's just people pleasing, right? And we were going to do 2 legs of this trip, and she was paying for the biggest portion of the Airbnbs, and we were just paying for a little bit. And then a hurricane came through, so we had to alter the whole trip plan, and I know that she was still paying much more. So I felt a duty to kind of do what she wanted and to not disappoint her, which wasn't her fault. Like, none of this was her fault, but one of the biggest things about me that I know is that I cannot regulate when I'm tired. Most of us can't, but I'm especially sensitive to this, I think, because I don't see other people acting the way I do when I'm tired. And she's one of those road trip people who wants to get up at 3 a.m., get on the road, whatever. I'm not that person. I'm never going to be that person. I used to in my 20s, but it never ended up being worth it. I tried to set the boundary. It wasn't necessarily received well, and I gave in. And that was step number 1 to catastrophe, because I was exhausted. I was so exhausted because, of course, I stayed up till at least midnight getting things ready, whatever. So I got like 3 hours of sleep, and it wasn't good. And so I was just in a really bad place. The whole trip was pretty tense because I had created a lot of conflict on day 1. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. You can go listen to those episodes. But I was so hurt and betrayed by my own expectations at the end of it, because I was so frustrated, because I had already been doing the Finding Peace method, and or at least I had an understanding. The Finding Peace workbook really helps you break down your shame narratives and understand your core wounds. So I had some understanding, and I thought that that was enough. And so one of the things that really meant so much to me in that episode with Jane Doe, where we recap that trip, is kind of going through things I could have done to help when I was getting to that level 10 red place where I was just so dysregulated and just feeling so attacked and so alone and so misunderstood and so judged. Not because anybody else was actually perpetrating those things, but I was not well. And I remember the simplest idea of, we probably should have pulled over the car when I started to get really worked up and let me get away from the people in my car for a minute to calm down. And that would have been okay. And it seems so simple now. And it seemed even simple in that conversation, but in the moment, never even crossed my mind. So that's a really important example of why integration is important. Knowing isn't enough. Awareness isn't enough. It doesn't give you the repetition to be able to make tough choices for yourself when you're dysregulated. Dysregulation, you are in survival mode. You're literally running from a bear internally. That's what your nervous system thinks it's doing, because your brain isn't asking, do you understand? It's asking, are we safe? So, okay, I remember hearing a lot about the nervous system, the vagus nerve, all these things, and it didn't make sense to me. I talk about the nervous system a lot, and I've given some brief explanations. I'm just going to throw another little thing out here, but it is the part of you that scans the environment for danger and then prepares you for danger. And it isn't just looking for physical danger. It's looking for, hey guys, it's me. Emotionally Unavailable is produced 100% in-house by me with no team. So if this show has ever helped you and you want to give back, subscribe to the Patreon. There's several different levels with different benefits in each. Check the show notes and you can see what each tier subscription will get you. There's also lots of fun things coming down the pipeline for the Patreon subscribers. So get in early. You can get a workbook, you can buy merch, you can do any of the things, and all of that supports the show to help it keep going. Really appreciate every single one of you. I love you so much, and I can't wait to see what we continue to do together. Anything that's meant danger to you in the past. So if you think of it like a central processing unit, because safety is the key to survival, right? Safety is the key to survival. So that's why I call it a central processing unit, because it is connected to all of the other parts of you. So for some people, danger might be yelling. Some people, danger might be rejection. Some people, danger might be conflict. For some people, disappointing someone else is dangerous. Okay, but why? Let me give you a quick why. Because when you were a child, when something felt very, very, very scary, that was danger. That meant sometimes it really was dangerous because, some of us got our asses beat, So there was that. But then also even just the withdrawal, the withholding of love and affection. Well, if we need connection to survive and we need affection to survive as children, then yeah, the withdrawal or withholding of that is dangerous, right? So many of us had the silent treatment, had the just withholding of affection when we were in trouble. So the idea of creating those dynamics again is very scary. And it taught us that we need to be of service, to be pleasing, to perform for love, belonging, worthiness, and value. This is why insight alone doesn't work, because the nervous system doesn't speak English, right? It doesn't respond just because you read a book. It doesn't calm down because you know you're wounding. Like, that was where I was like, what the fuck? Because I understood my wounding so well. I do still understand my wounding so well. I'm still working on integration all the time, but it learns through experience. That's what it does. So that's what I want to talk about, is the types of experiences that you can have that will help rewire, help reprogram, change the way your brain predicts outcomes. And if you haven't checked out the last 2 solos in this series, check those out, because that's what I talked a lot about. Maybe not as much as I should have, but we'll be talking more. But this is just kind of, where my heart's following. So yeah. So the last one I talked about the predictive behaviors of your nervous system. So that's the thing, is like when I went on that beach vacation, I hadn't had any new experiences to help me figure it out. Now, doing the hindsight thing with my friend afterwards did provide new information to my brain that I could take into the next experience, which really did help. I had to learn that people in my energy, like in my bubble, when I'm escalated, feels like touching me. And when I'm escalated, I don't want to be touched. And so like soothing is something I like to do on my own. Especially at first, I could not regulate in the presence of others. Now I guess that's one way I've really grown. I do not mind being vulnerable and breathing a certain way or doing anything else in front of other people. And I'll tell you, that was a really big, I remember one time trying to talk to Brian, about my husband, if you're new, about some things I would be doing when we were having conversations that I didn't feel safe in, like around money, that I would need to be like breathing a certain way. I almost threw up just thinking about doing that in front of him. And that was like 2 years ago. So Your nervous system is constantly making predictions about how much protection you're going to need. Integration happens when old predictions meet a new outcome. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So if your nervous system learns through experience, some people learn that people leave when I have needs. So their brain immediately predicts. And I've been in this situation a lot. So I want you to slow down and see if this resonates at all, because it's hard to know that these are your patterns if you haven't, really examined them a lot. But so one of the things that happens is apparently somewhere I learned it wasn't safe to have needs as a child. I mean, obviously I was abused and neglected. But now when I need to ask for help, here's what happens every single time. I combat these now, but it still happens to me. I go to ask for some help and I'm pretty anxious about asking for the help. And then my brain automatically goes to, yeah, but if you do that, they're going to be mad. Or if you do that, they're not going to do it. And then you're going to be mad. So it's already predicting the outcome. It does that with lots of things. But so that's my old prediction that if I'm honest about what I need, that's going to cause disconnection. But then I've provided it with new experiences by choosing one or two people that I feel really safe with, that I don't doubt our relationship at all. And I ask them for what I need. And I say, that's been one thing, especially after losing Jake, is I have one friend that I feel incredibly safe asking for time together, time out of my house, time away from my other kids, time away from my family, to be me and to just experience my own self. Because that's been something as a mom, carrying my other children's grief just naturally, not because they've asked me to. But then also just as a person who's a healer, just making sure I'm taking enough time to have my own grief process and not just the part of me that shares their grief. It requires getting away from them and kind of just having joy and fun. And I have one friend that I feel very, very safe to say, can we get coffee? Can we go for a walk? Anything that I want to ask, I will. I feel very safe. I feel really safe with my husband asking for what I need. And at first, I probably didn't after Jake died, but it was I knew I couldn't do the old shit that I've done to cope with things. I knew if I was going to survive child loss, I was going to need to show up as best as I possibly could, very consciously, very intentionally. And so it actually helped me become very aware of a lot of my patterns that I didn't even know still really existed as strongly as they did. But I could see very clearly where I still very much had trouble feeling safe with needs. I still see this in some ways because it's a constant struggle to allow people to see my grief, I guess. I don't know. So if you need a new experience, find someone you're safe with to ask for what you need. Ask for help. That's the other thing is my sister offered to help me clean. That's something I would have fucking never said yes to. But after Jake died, I needed it. I said yes. Another friend offered to do laundry. I said yes because our washer and dryer broke fucking the week he died. So I said yes. Again, just showing up differently. And guess what? All of the things, even in those moments that my brain was trying to predict to tell me no, none of those things happened. And so I met those old predictions with new outcomes. And it showed me it is safe to ask for help. It's not safe with everyone. So that's a distinction. And it's okay that you don't feel safe with everyone. Start with your one or two safe people. And if you don't have safe people, is that true? Is there not one person? One thing that helped me get over the subconscious belief that conflict means relationships are over was having a little conflict and giving the other person a lot of grace and compassion the way I want them to give it to me and the way I give it to myself. If they don't respond well to me setting a boundary or me explaining how I feel about their behavior, any of those things, I just no longer freak out if they don't respond great to that right away. I think there's always, a way for us to kind of come to the middle and understand each other better. I also think that I just don't have expectations for people the way I did before. I don't think my needs matter any more than somebody else's, and I don't think my feelings matter any more than someone else's. And theirs don't matter more than mine either. But I think, too, I had to learn to quit assigning a lot of meaning and morality to experiences and just understand like this is just kind of a problem we need to solve. And so conflict does not feel as dangerous as it used to. It can feel really unsafe if I know the other person hasn't done any of the work on themselves, and it's going to end up causing me just like a giant fucking headache. I hate setting boundaries with people that I just fucking know are not going to receive them. There's a lot of outcome predicting there. And so that's really where I'm going to integrate the exercise that I had you all do last week about fact versus forecast, not last week, Monday, because I really want to learn how to soothe myself in those moments and say, maybe, I mean, chances are with some people, the forecast is going to be accurate, but we won't know. It's not certain just because it feels certain to my brain because my brain requires certainty. So does yours. Doesn't mean that it is. And so what can I do to kind of get past this anxiety and do what I need to do for myself? One thing that really feels unsafe to people is like if they make a mistake, like their old prediction was if I make a mistake, I'll be rejected. And, one way that you can gain a new experience for that is like admit when you don't know something, admit when you have made a mistake, and allow others to show up for you in that moment and show you like nobody expects you to be perfect. That's just an old story that was created. It was true at some point. You learned it as truth. It's just not true anymore. And so you don't need to protect yourself in that way. So provide your nervous system with a new outcome and let it show you or show it that it's safe to not be perfect. And if you're seeing a theme in here or not seeing a theme, I guess I'll just tie it together. Like truly vulnerability and authenticity are the way. That's why this show is called Emotionally Unavailable, because I was learning in real time how to be more vulnerable, how to be authentic from a person who thought she was both of those things. I realized I was one of the least vulnerable people I had ever known. And there were parts of me that were authentic, but so many parts were not because I was just hiding so many things about myself. And shame really makes us feel like if you knew me, you would reject me. And so I was living under that umbrella a lot and just like trying my hardest for the parts that I've embraced to be good enough to make up for the fact that I was so imperfect in all these other areas. So vulnerability and authenticity, that's the key. So when you start to feel that resistance and you start to hear those old predictions of, well, if you do that, you know what's going to happen. That's where being vulnerable and being authentic is going to get you a long way. Saying your truth. It's not going to be received well all the time or the first time. And so, that's the other thing I really want to get into is like, well, what happens if I do something different and I'm trying to meet an old prediction with a new outcome and I get the same old outcome? Well, that's where confirmation bias comes in. A lot of times we will choose the exact wrong person, the most unsafe person we know to go to ask for help. That was me. I absolutely did that before without knowing. And so really, I'm not saying sit around and analyze who's the safest to go to, but I am saying if you do something and it goes poorly or you receive, an old confirmation for an old prediction, rather than letting it confirm this bias that you have and saying to yourself, see, this is why, that's how I know, that's my first clue that like I'm wrapped up in an old pattern is if my brain's like, this is exactly why. That's actually literally a cue that I use to make me stop and go, what just happened? Listen, if you are a person who has been entangled in toxic cycles for a really long time, your nervous system doesn't feel safe in anything other than that. It will choose the toxic and familiar over healthy any day because it's trained to look for danger. Anything new is dangerous. How can it keep you alive if you're just going to go willy-nilly talk to people you don't know? What? So, that's just your nervous system. And so, yeah, sometimes you're going to receive the old confirmation for your old predictions, period. because some of us have surrounded ourselves with really emotionally unavailable people. I know most of the people in my life are not going to receive me well when I set a boundary. Doesn't stop me from doing it. I'll engage in the conflict and let that fall however it goes. But that's the cost of relationships with people who haven't done the work that I have. I don't have very many of those relationships, but I do. And so it is what it is. I just understand that that shit is their stories and their predictions and their outcomes. And all of those things are about them. It's not about me. So my worth and value are no longer tied into anybody else. I fully understand. I am so worthy and I am so valuable and I am so loved. And I love the shit out of myself. So I don't require the validation of others. They don't have to receive my boundary for me to set it. I'm the one who gets to decide what I will and won't tolerate and where I will put myself, what situations I'll be in, who I spend my time with. I'm the one who gets to decide that. So I can care and express that care and concern for their feelings, but it's not going to dictate how I move. Remember that we don't have to be validated to be valid. And so that's something to remember as you're doing this work. But the other thing, I feel like I put this on the Patreon on the lowest tier, but I might be wrong, but there is a little nervous system menu that I kind of go through whenever I'm feeling, if you're feeling jittery or you're overthinking, maybe you would register as a little anxiety, you're dysregulated. And so the first thing to ask yourself is, do I need food? Do I need sleep? Do I need some sort of hygiene? Do I need a walk? Do I need a stretch? Do I need a hug? Do I need a good conversation? Those are all things that I will go through the list in my mind. What do I need? Sometimes I just need space. So anyway, I hope this helps. I would love your feedback on this episode and what resonated, what was confusing. Yeah. So also, if you don't mind, make sure that you rate and review on whatever platform that you're listening on. Spotify and Apple have their own ratings and reviews. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Slowly, my little subscriber count is going up, and I appreciate that so much. And I love you guys. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you. And I'm excited to continue this series. So I'll see you later. Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share. Emotionally Unavailable. All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
INDEPE and cut.